Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Ashley Barlow Company podcast. I'm Ashley Barlow, your host. If you are a parent, a teacher, or someone who works at a school, or you're a community member, a volunteer, or a staff member at an organization that supports people with special education plans, a coach, a tutor, or even a grandparent, you're in the right place. Sit back with an ice-cold glass of lemonade, put on your walking shoes and grab some headphones, roll down the windows and cruise. Ready, set, go. Educate, advocate, collaborate.
Welcome back to the Special Education and Advocacy Podcast with Ashley Barlow. I'm Ashley Barlow, and I am so happy you're here. Friends, it has been a minute. Well, first of all, it's been a minute since we were together. I'm sorry that there was no new episode last week. We did take a week off. If you've been here long enough, you know that I sometimes have podcasts, recorded 6 or 8 weeks in advance. And sometimes I am on a week-by-week basis. And Rachel's texting me saying, hey, do you have your podcast submitted? And last week was one of those weeks. Honestly, I did not estimate how long it would take me to wrap up IEP season. Here in Greater Cincinnati, I just had a lot of paperwork, a lot of communication, a lot of administrative work, and still some negotiations and meetings and that sort of thing. And I thought I would have a whole lot more time. And so I'm usually pretty good about my calendar. And last week, I just totally lost it. And so I'm sorry that we were not together last week, but I, don't want to just hop on and give you something that isn't worth it. And so sometimes we just have to cut our losses. So it's been a minute since we've been together. But it also has been a minute since I have recorded in my car. So here we are in my car. If you are on YouTube, what you are looking at right here, this is like the top part of my steering wheel. And then this is like the round part where your hands go. And I'm peering through this like half-shaped moon at the top of my steering wheel. Lots of times when this happens, I think, oh, we should just do the audio and we'll put a slide up on YouTube and we won't do the video. But you know what I think? I think it is really important for me to set the example that nobody's perfect and that imperfect is perfectly fine. And so, as we like to say around here, we are perfectly imperfect. And I am sitting in the parking lot of my local coffee shop. Jack came into my office 3 times this morning in the first 45 minutes of the day. And Griffin came in once. And I just realized that today was the kind of day where we might need for mom to be out of her home office. And so I'm going to work at the coffee shop for a second. My coffee shop actually does have a podcast recording space, but you have to pay for it. And my car is perfectly fine. So here we are. Also, the audio might be a little bit different. I have swimmer's ear and I cannot put an earpod or an earbud in my ears. It just does not work. So I do apologize if the audio is different, but swimmer's ear, man, whew, that makes you empathize with your kid. It had forgotten how annoying it was. It really, really hurt. And now it's to the point where it is just super duper annoying. All right. So anyway, today I want to talk to you about decodable readers. And the reason I want to talk to you about decodable readers is it is summer or you're getting close to summer. And I love to look at my Facebook memories. And I've been a little bit hard on myself in my Facebook memories. And so I want to save you from that. And I want to be able to provide some solutions for you. So here's what I'm seeing in my Facebook memories. I am seeing videos of Jack at my kitchen table doing some reading, like reading instruction with me, where I have little index cards with words, and the words might say, I see a, and then I put down a picture. So I see a bird. I see a bike. I see a bat. I see a, and I mean, for the most part, I think most of mine, they might start with the same letter or they might be from the same word family or something like that. But sometimes it's a word that he has a hard time saying, like I see a tricycle. And now I'm going to tell you what the problem with that is. Here's the problem with that. He's not reading any of those things. If this is an expressive language activity, which in his case it was also like a vocabulary building thing and a motor planning thing, because Jack still does not get articles like in that sentence, I see a. If he were just talking, he would probably leave the a out of that sentence. So if it's an expressive language activity, that's a perfectly fine activity. And I'm giving myself grace thinking I was putting a visual to that motor planning piece, and he did use his little pointer finger to say I, put his finger on I, C, put his finger on C, A, name. However, that's not a particularly effective reading strategy because, as we know, the science says that we should teach kids how to read, how to decode, and how to blend sounds together, and that phoneme grapheme relationship, the relationship between the sound and the symbol, as opposed to teaching them the shape of words and teaching them that context will be forever helpful in helping them to read. And so by continuing to teach him ICA, I'm teaching him the word I'm teaching him the word A, but I'm also teaching him the shape of the word C. At no point in those activities when he was little did I ever teach him that. I'm sure I taught him S says. I know I did that, but like EE is one way for E to be long, right? That's one way to spell the long E sound. And I wasn't teaching him that stuff in any kind of scope and sequence. So I don't know that we've ever talked about scope and sequence here on the podcast. So let's take a second to talk about scope and sequence. The scope and sequence is literally the order in which lessons are taught in a curriculum. And so scope and sequences are done with in good curricula, they're done with an intent. They're done, for a reason. And so in reading programs, we should be building upon skills. So we should be, working so that we can spell words or so that we can spell nonsense words, and so that we learn concepts that build upon one another. We aren't going to learn 4-digit multiplication until we learn single-digit multiplication, and then double-digit multiplication. And then double digits really is the same as 4-digit multiplication. The rules are the same. The process is the same. I think, if that's the way they still teach math. It was when I learned math. And then, you could put a decimal in there, and then you really only have to learn, if you're doing this multiplication thing, you really only have to learn like one thing. Where's the decimal go? So we count blah, 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 and then we stick the decimal back in there. But the multiplication piece is the same. So multiplying, for example, 10.59 times 29.78 is the same as multiplying 1,059 times whatever that bottom denominator was without the decimals. Then you stick the decimal back in there. So we do this in an order. We wouldn't teach 4-unit decimal multiplication before we taught double-digit multiplication, right? So in reading, the best practice, that what the science of reading tells us, is that we should teach letter sounds and letters, the phoneme grapheme relationship, in particular orders so that they make sense. And kids should never, or with very few exceptions, be guessing on words. They should always read things that they know, things that they have been taught, and that they should be able to do. Now, there are curricula that are based to fill in those gaps. So sometimes, like a big example of this is R-controlled vowels. When my mom taught grade school, they called them bossy R's. So an R next to a vowel makes a vowel do really weird things, like the word purse. So P-A-R-S-E. If you were spelling that out, you would do and that does not sound anything like the way you pronounce it. Purse. R. So the AR becomes this bossy R combination, this R-controlled AR vowel team or vowel sound. And so that is one that sometimes comes up. Those words sometimes come up. And there are curricula that help you fill that in. There's one that's called like secret sound or secret spellers or something like that. where if that comes up, then you can do a quick little 5-minute lesson and then the child can read it. But the point of these curricula is that kids should not be guessing. We shouldn't teach them that best guess reading, best guess spelling is an appropriate strategy because, we get to 12th grade science and we have all of these words of Greek origin or German origin, and we've got prefixes and suffixes and word components that we have to put together to make long words for science or in social studies and in other classes. And at some point, we have to be able to read those, right? And so the solution to that is to utilize, to follow a curriculum with a scope and sequence, and then to use the decodable readers that are at that point in the scope and sequence. And so what you do is you see where your kid is in their scope and sequence. Let's say you've got a first or second grade level reader. It could be a fifth grader who's reading on the second grade level. Then you say to the teacher, hey, where are they? Can you send me the scope and sequence and tell me where they are? And then you look at all the skills that they've learned. Have they learned all 26 letter sounds? Have they learned the vowel sound? Have they learned how to spell long vowels? Have they learned, and therefore how to read them? Have they learned are controlled? Have they learned magic E, that an E at the end of some words makes the vowel long? Like make, it's not Mac, it's M-A-K-E, and that E makes the A long. And then you just find decodable readers, and believe me, you can Google this, like decodable readers for letters reading program. It literally will come up. And you do the decodables that lead up to that point where they are, so that they aren't reading things that they don't know. They have to be taught the concept before they do it. And so, if you don't want to Google it, these things are super affordable on Teachers Pay Teachers. You might be able to find them in your local library. And you also might be able to ask your teacher if they have access to them, that they could share them with you for use in the summer. It's just super duper important. And we don't want all of this summer time to be spent on something that isn't effective and might even be detrimental to their growth in reading. So don't be terribly hard on yourselves, right? Because if you don't know any better, then you don't know any better. And exposure to language is good, but we don't want to teach kids that it's okay to guess. And so the solution is to figure out what they have been taught and to go back through those decodables and see if you can start over and frankly just do a better job at helping to teach them how to read by using decodable readers. Okay, I feel better because I am not being hard on myself. And I've got all my decodable readers printed off for Jack. They're all in a binder, and he gets to choose a couple a day to read, and he's doing a great job, and I can feel good about it. So I hope that you can feel good about it too. I hope summer is going well. And I also hope that I can carve out time weekly henceforth to get together with you once a week. Have a great week. I will see you next week. Same time, same place, hopefully.